Okay, so now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at monitoring the market environment. Okay, everything we've spoken about so far has all been about making a good business decision. And as we've kept noticing that good business decisions are based on making sure that we've got good information out there. Remembering garbage in, garbage out. We need to make sure we know what's going on, where it's going to happen, and then make our decisions accordingly so we know what to do about it. All right? There's one thing that's a constant, and that is that things are always going to be changing around us. Okay, and we need to stay on top of that to make sure that nothing negatively impacts us later on. That we could see what was coming on, we could adjust for it, adapt, and then continue. If we don't, then things catch us by surprise, and then it's a game of catch up if we can indeed catch up. Okay, so we can also take advantage of those changing conditions to push out new initiatives and take new steps in our business and start to get on the front foot and actually drive a little bit of change and take advantage of that for our purpose. Okay, so one of the things that we might really strongly consider is making sure that we have someone assigned to monitoring the marketing environment and provide the decision makers with that information. Okay, remember that the decision makers can't always be checking the information as well and spending all their time doing that, because we need them to be able to consider information and make considered decisions. Okay, so as I say, we might be setting someone the job of monitoring it for us. Okay, so one of the things we're going to look at when we're monitoring the marketing environment is making sure that we recognize the importance, okay? So we need to recognize the importance. Okay, so that's something we're going to talk about, recognizing that it is part of business that we really need to get right and that we need to be paying attention to it. Okay, so that's the monitoring role specifically. Okay, so we understand how important that person is to us. We need to make sure that we're also giving the role to specific staff. Okay, remembering that unless we give it to somebody, it's nobody's job. Okay, so we make sure we're giving it to somebody, and we make sure that we've got the right somebody as well. We're not just going to give it to anybody. We're not going to give it to nobody. We're going to give it to somebody, and the right somebody. Okay, so the next thing we're going to start thinking about is how we're going to allocate funds, because we need to make sure this is happening. Okay, this is important information, and we can't just pay it off and go, look, we'll hope the problem goes away, or drive around running around blind. Okay, we need to get this information, we need to fund it, we need to make sure things are working well. We need to make sure we're identifying the areas of importance. Okay, so that we're looking at what's the most important information we need to know and making sure we're getting it. Okay, because if we don't, once again, no one really cares about some vague detail. We need to make sure that that's the stuff that's important to our business. Let's get on it. Okay? And then we need to start thinking about, well, what's our method? Okay, so what's our monitoring method? So how are we going to get that information? Okay, how are we going to get that? What tools are we going to use? How's this thing actually going to fit together for us? Okay? So if we think about the who, what, where, when, why, and how, we start to look at, well, what? Well, we're monitoring the market environment. Well, what specifically? We want to know about, well, what's the areas of importance to us? That's what we're monitoring. Who is going to monitor it? Okay, so which staff are involved? So who, what, where? Okay, well, we're going to monitor into our market environment. Okay, so that's what they're going to look at. When? Okay, so how often do we want them looking at that information? So, are we getting them to look at it daily, weekly, monthly, what it happens to be? And then why? Well, the why is so that we can actually monitor and make good business decisions. So who, what, where, when, why? Our favorite questions, okay? Stick with them. We need to think about, what corrective actions we can take. Okay, because our corrective actions, we want to take advantage of opportunities. We want to make sure that we're not getting, ruined by bad things coming along that are going to surprise us. We need to start thinking about our report features. So how do we want things laid out? Okay, where do we want the information? When do we want the information, etc. Okay, so we also start thinking about, errors. Okay, because people get tired, they make mistakes, and mistakes in this case can be really bad. Okay, so we need to look at that. And also thinking about industry requirements. Okay, so what is it that industry demands from us, or what are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be complying with? Okay, so the first thing we start to think about there is, where are we going to get the information from, or what's it going to be about? So, if we've got our who, what, where, when, why, we start thinking about, making sure that we have the correct information that relates to our business. We need to make sure that the first thing we do is set the correct monitor. okay, and get the right person. So when we're talking about monitor, we're talking about the person, okay, or the people. And in this case, what we're saying is that that's an important role to our business. We need to make sure that we have someone who's skilled. We need to make sure that the person out there is able to find the information and then present it back to us, because that's going to allow us to gain market insight as to what's happening out there, okay? So this person's role is to act as our eyes and ears and source that information and provide the information back so we can start to make decisions. They literally are our eyes and ears so our brains can work out what's going on, okay? The reason we do that is because we want to stay competitive in a changing environment. We always want to make sure that we're able to make good, quick, nimble decisions, okay? So this is one of those roles that is important. Okay, and you know, it's the sort of thing that it's an important stuff. It's not urgent. It doesn't, you know, we're not talking about it has to be continually monitored 24/7. But you know, well, it depends on your industry, I suppose. But generally, this is one of those things that yes, it is important that we're doing. Okay, that there needs to be some sort of process which we set, and we make sure we're getting information at regular intervals that's correct and accurate. Okay, so I need to start thinking about making sure that I then, because it is important, make sure that I am giving it to specific staff. Okay, I need to make sure that I know who's doing it. Now, I have the option of outsourcing, and there are companies out there who we can outsource to. Obviously, though, that becomes another different financial consideration, and we can tell them what information we want, and they can feed us reports on a regular and ongoing basis. You know, they can, you know, media monitors, those sort of things that are out there, looking at information, distilling the information, then providing us back segments or slices based on what we're interested in, you know, and they can collect that up for us. Okay, now, aside from that, we need to think about, you know, regardless of what method we use, we need to make sure we're allocating funds appropriately. Okay, so we need to make sure that if we don't allocate the funds, it'll just sort of slip away. If we don't say, look, this is a dedicated thing we do, we'll find that it gets deprioritized, and then all of a sudden, we'll get taken by surprise when something changes and we weren't paying attention and we thought we were. Okay, so we need to allocate a budget for it, and we need to stick to that. Now, the problem is, obviously, is that when we're allocating funds, not only do we need to stick to it, but we need to realize that the funds are finite, and we might not have millions and millions of dollars sitting around to do that. As much as we'd like to get the best and, you know, complete information the whole time, we need to understand that some areas are going to be critically important to us, so must have versus nice to have. So what we're going to do there is we're going to start to look at, well, when there's that fight between budget and what we can get, okay, what's the most important thing we need to know? What's critical? What's going to ruin us if we don't have that information? And that's the stuff we need to track first until we get down to some of the other details, which we might not find as critical. Okay, remember, the purpose of this is to be able to make good decisions for the ongoing survivability of our operation and possibly, you know, get ahead of the game. Now, things that we might look at there, then we might look at, well, what's our competitors doing? Okay, so what's happening out there in the market? What are the competitors doing? Are they starting anything? Are they about to change anything? Are they about to launch something that we need to know about so that we don't get behind? We might want to know about government legislation. What's the government doing? What are laws that are coming? What's going to change, you know, at a federal, state, or local level that we can take advantage of, or things that we need to start guarding against? We need to think about what are our existing customers doing? What's their patterns of use? How many items are they buying? When are they coming in? What are they doing? Or we might want information about our target customers. So those people out there who don't use us yet that we'd like to get to use us, what are their habits and behaviors, and you know, what are they out there doing day to day that we can now start to anticipate and possibly act upon? All right, so what are some of the methods that we might use? Well, some of the methods we might use are things like your social media, okay? Checking Facebook, Twitter, blogs, etc. Just like dealing with people. You know, you can look at different accounts and see what people are up to. You might be doing that against competitor businesses. You might be looking at what social trends are coming up. You might also, if you're running a business Facebook account, you might be in the back of that, analysing yourself against someone else, and that'll measure how many, you know, hits and traffic and all that sort of gear. So some really great information, and you know, that you can pull off the back of that. You know, your Google Analytics, etc. Very handy. You can also check out the traditional media. Okay, there's still a newspaper, comes out every day. Have a look at it. You know, pick the one that doesn't have all the, you know, the comics in it. You know, make sure that you're reading something that's worthwhile. The business papers are pretty good. They're still valid and relevant. You know, you've got things like TV and radio. There's a lot of information there. Okay, the other thing is industry journals and reviews. So people like the Australian Medical Association put out one for doctors. You know, CPA, if you're an accountant, you know, you can go to their different bodies. Human Resources Institute put out stuff for HR practitioners. Okay, so there's a whole range of different industry publications you can also get, and they've obviously researched a lot of articles about where trends are and what's going to happen. So that allows you to continually monitor what's going on and possibly get an idea of the future. Okay, so there's government websites at a federal level, state level, and local level. You know, so business.gov.au is a big one there. So you know that's a federal government business page. You can get into there. State government as well, various chambers of commerce, etc. You know, you start to get involved in grabbing information from those sources. They're good, they're fairly reliable. There's statistical resources. So, you know, Australian Bureau of Statistics has really good information out there. Obviously, there's heaps of information out there, so it does become information overload. You've got to work out what you want to track. And you might also look at your customer surveys there as well, okay? Because customer surveys will give you a lot of information, all right? You know, moving further through that, you need to think about, well, you know, what are some of the things that you need to do? Obviously, this is about gathering information to be able to be used, which means that it needs to come through in a fashion that you can then take action from. Okay, so what it means is if we're going to use this information, we need to make sure that our reports are structured in a useful way and that they've got good information in them. So the first thing that we might want to do is we're going to make it into those key points. The first thing we need to do is start with an executive summary. Okay, now an executive summary is just that short statement about what does this report do, or what's the intention of this report, what sort of information is it there to provide us, so that someone can quickly pick it up and go, okay, it's a sales report, tells about the weekly sales in our point of business. Okay, whatever it happens to be, a little bit about maybe where the information was sourced from, and make sure that it's someone can understand the context about why it's been put together. Moving from there, obviously you want to make sure that the most important information is quickly available. So neatly laid out so I can find what I need to know right at the top, very quick. Okay, so I don't want to be wading through a whole lot of stuff to get to where I want to be. Okay, so we make sure that the reports are always standardized in their format. So once I've moved past that, if I'm going to come up with a model for a sales sheet, I can see that each week it's laid out the same. Okay, the idea is I can then put a whole bunch next to each other and really quickly gather the information from them, and I can make a very quick and rapid comparison. I don't have to read through and then come up to a conclusion. I've got the information there, it's cleanly presented, I can put them beside each other, I now know what's going on, and I can watch a pattern of behaviour, and then it's going to tell me, is there a pattern? You know, what does the 5th week look like? You know, are we on a, is it going up, is it going down, what's it doing? And it becomes really easy to read and really easy to compare, which means I can get some good comparisons and some good information. The use of graphics is also really good for these sort of things. You know, one picture equals 1,000 words, so make sure you're using those pictures. Okay, a couple of quick graphs can very quickly convey some good key ideas and once again allow people some very quick visual comparison. Okay, so make sure that you're using things like graphs in there to really assist in the absorption of data and information. Remember, a lot of these are made so I can make a quick decision, and the quicker I can gather the information and understand it and see what's going on, the quicker I can get to the decision-making process. Okay, and it's much better to have those graphs and that sort of gear rather than pages and pages of data. Put the pages and pages of data after the graph. So if I want to know what happened in the graph, I can go have a look later. But don't tell me everything and then show me. Show me first, and then if I'm really worried about it, I can go find out. Okay, so the other thing is making sure that you're also, anything you're putting out there for decision making has to be accurate. So making sure that you've picked up any errors becomes critically important there. And the way we do that is by having a checklist to make sure that did I get all that information? Yes. Have I looked at that? Have I done that? Yes. Okay, so the person who's compiling information has to make sure that they actually went and got it from all the sources that you want to consider, that nothing got accidentally left out or nothing got conflated forward. Or, there's been no tampering with the data. There's not people holding over reports for next week to make figures look sexy or anything like that. There's just a nice, consistent approach to how they've gathered that. Because we don't want them to make mistakes, but we also don't want them to start fudging any figures, which becomes a bit of a thing in business, unfortunately. Particularly with sales tracking, watch that one. Okay. The other thing is it can sometimes be useful to have a third party come in. So get someone else to also come and have a look at the figures and see how it was put together. Remembering that human error is a thing. People can get very, very tired. They can start to make mistakes, particularly compiling these things on a Friday afternoon. Everyone's looking to get out the door and go home. They could be quite tired. We used to do a lot of our reports at 7 or 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and I guarantee you that your mind is somewhere else and you're just smacking figures through and it gets very dull. That's when mistakes happen, or that's when you miss something. So having someone else just quickly check your stuff is always worthwhile. And when those people check it, they need to look at the data to make sure your numbers are right, but also whatever you've written to make sure there's no typographical errors, or you haven't accidentally added or omitted words which completely change the purpose of, or the intent of a statement. Lastly, thinking about your industry requirements. Okay, so in your industry, what information do they normally gather, or what do you need to do? You might need to provide your figures to someone else. You might need to make sure that you're gathering it for compliance purposes, particularly in things like, pharmaceuticals or a lot of those very controlled industries. So make sure that, you're aware of what the requirements are for your space. Once again, talking to your professional association or your industry body becomes very important, because they can give you some good information on the how to track and what to track, and possibly even where. Okay, so if your industry is moving towards new technologies, you need to make sure that you're, that you're following along to make sure that you're keeping up to date, or possibly looking at what are better options. Okay, am I just going to follow on and keep up with everyone else, or am I going to try and get on the front foot? So, understanding where they're going and what's happening becomes highly important. And then lastly, making sure you're carrying out your cost-benefit analysis to make sure you're not wasting money there. Okay. Now, when we start to look at monitoring, this all works together along with your STEEP and your SWOT and any other business information that you've got to try and come up with an overall picture. Remember, this is about being able to make a decision. We're not just grabbing this for the history books for someone else to come by and have a look at later. This is for your purposes to start to consider what you can do with this information, where you can take it and improve your business and get on that front foot. So you're not caught by surprise. You're not wasting time and money trying to fix things that have gone wrong, that you're out there, you're looking ahead, you're working out what's going on, you're anticipating demand, you're on the front foot, you've got plenty of time to plan, good decision making goes on, and then you're just not ever caught in a position of failing to live up to the promises that you're making to your customers. So go out there, monitor your market environment, think about your who, what, where, when, why. Okay, understand it's important. Give the role to your key staff to make sure someone is on it and it's somebody's job. Remember, if it's not somebody's job, it's nobody's job. Okay, and if it's nobody's job, then it's going to be your job possibly. Okay, so what needs to happen there is make sure it's being done, make sure there's funds allocated to doing it. Don't just pay it off or think, oh, look, it'll take care of itself. It won't. Make sure you know how much it's going to cost you and back that up. Understand that it is an important area, and monitor the areas of importance. Okay, what do you want to look at? Make sure you think about your monitoring methods, your social media, or wherever you're going to get the information from. Think about the way you want your reports laid out so you can best utilize them quickly and make good use of them. And in a reader-friendly manner. Make sure they've been checked for reports, remembering that garbage in means garbage out, and you don't want to make garbage decisions. And make sure you're looking at, well, what's the industry requirements, and what do I need to know about that space, so that you're always gathering correct information to keep you compliant, and once again, out there making good calls and running successful businesses. All right, if you're doing all that, then you're monitoring your market environment and everything should go okay. Good decisions will be coming your way. Best of luck with that out there.